Now then came President Trump's suggestion that Canada become the 51st state. And now, while some Americans might see this as a harmless bit of rhetoric, to Canadians, it was perceived as a profound insult to their national sovereignty. Imagine this. The price of your gasoline jumps 30 to 70 cents per gallon overnight. Canadian oil that powers much of the Midwest United States suddenly costs a lot more. And that trip to Niagara Falls, it just got a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive as tensions escalate between Canada and the United States. This isn't some distant future scenario. This is a very real potential outcome from the deteriorating relationship between the United States and Canada. Every day, until recently, $2.7 billion in goods and services crossed our northern border, and about 400,000 people crossed that border, headed in each direction. With Canada remaining America's largest export market for 34 of our 50 states. But a partnership that took generations to build is now facing its greatest test. Welcome, Patriots, to Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. Today, we're diving into what might be the most consequential and underreported international relationship for everyday Americans, our bond with our northern neighbor, Canada. Now, if you're watching us on a podcast, please like us and subscribe to this channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please rate us and leave a review. Your ratings and comments are our best way to learn your thoughts and to understand what matters to you. Now let me start with what's at stake economically. Canada isn't just another trading partner. It's America's largest single export market. In 2024, bilateral trade, that's trade that crosses the border in both directions, it was approximately $762 billion. Now, according to U.S. government data, the U.S. exports to Canada totaled around $349 billion of that number. The U.S. Census Bureau reports that in 2024, Canada was the top destination for U.S. exports and the third largest source of U.S. imports after Mexico and China. Think about what this means in practical terms. Now, Canada supplies energy to the U.S., and those supplies have grown dramatically, with crude oil imports increasing from 924 million barrels in 2013 to 1.4 billion with a B barrels in 2023. Canada now supplies about 60% of U.S. crude imports, a striking increase from just 33% a decade ago. Now, this dramatically enhances our energy security, of course, with Canada being so close by. If these supplies were disrupted by a trade war, U.S. gasoline prices would increase significantly, particularly in the Midwest, where our refineries are set up and optimized for Canadian heavy crude. Those refineries combine Canadian heavy crude with our light, sweet West Texas Intermediate to make every petroleum product you can imagine, and it's very inexpensive for them to do it that way. But our connection runs deeper than just economics. Canada and the United States share the world's largest undefended border, 5,525 miles of land and water. Now, together, we operate NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, which monitors and defends North American airspace. Now, this partnership was established in 1958 and remains the only binational military command of its kind in the world. The security consequences of a deteriorating relationship with Canada are very significant. Just last month, in April 2025, General Gregory Guilliot, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, head of NORAD and U.S. Northern Command, testified that without Canada's radar sites, and I'm quoting now, the northern approaches would be severely under-resourced and we would lose a significant amount of domain awareness and response, end quote. Now, this is especially concerning as these northern approaches represent, and I'm quoting again, the fastest and easiest approach for adversaries to take North America, end quote. Let me put that in another way. Without those radar sites, missiles, from Russia can fly over the Arctic Circle and hit North American cities before we have any time to do anything about it. NORAD is critical to our safety. Now, Canada has committed $38.6 billion to modernize NORAD over the next 2 decades, with most of the projects expected to reach initial operational capability within the next decade. Now, this includes deploying advanced radar systems to detect threats in the Arctic. It includes a $4.2 billion deal for Australian technology, which was announced in March of 2025 for that, and that technology will be delivered by 2029. Now, this partnership wasn't built overnight. Through 2 world wars, the Cold War, and into the present day, Canada has stood by with the United States as our most reliable ally. But we've had our disagreements. President Nixon's 1971 tariffs, disputes over softwood lumber, and different perspectives on military interventions, especially Vietnam. Despite these challenges, the foundation of mutual respect and shared values has always allowed us to work through difficult times. And that brings us to today. In just 60 days, our relationship with Canada has deteriorated dramatically. President Trump's imposition of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods has sent shockwaves through our integrated economies. Industries particularly hard hit include the automotive manufacturing, agricultural products, and the energy sectors that employ millions of Americans. Now, then came President Trump's suggestion that Canada become the 51st state. And now, while some Americans might see this as a harmless bit of rhetoric, to Canadians, it was perceived as a profound insult to their national sovereignty. In January 2025, a poll by YouGov found that 68% of Canadians opposed joining the United States, while the American opinion on that topic was much more divided on the issue, with significant support among Trump voters and significant support in certain regions of the country. Now, I understand the American desire to unite with Canada. Americans have felt that way since the Revolutionary War, and it's been proposed at least twice in our history before now. I know from personal conversations with friends and colleagues from Alberta that many in Western Canada, in the Western Canadian provinces, are interested in becoming part of the United States. Decades of liberal Canadian policies transferring wealth from the West to the East in Canada have left Western Canadians feeling disenfranchised, and Donald Trump's programs of lower taxes, less regulation, smaller government, and America First appeals to those Western Canadians. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who was largely elected because of Trump's statements, he just recently said in the White House that, quote, "No part of Canada is for sale," and his declaration that economic and military cooperation between the two nations was over represents a dramatic diplomatic crisis, unlike anything we've ever seen with Canada in modern times. And this is a real problem. There are other dimensions to this story as well. While Eastern Canada, particularly Quebec and Ontario, have reacted with outrage, the sentiment in the Western provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan is more complex. Decades of what Western Canadians perceive as economic policies favoring the Eastern provinces have created regional tensions in Canada. In April 2025, a poll by the Angus Reid Institute found that if Liberals formed the next government, which they now have under Prime Minister Carney, approximately 30% in Alberta and 33% in Saskatchewan would vote to leave Canada, whether to form their own country or to join the United States. However, the vast majority said they would vote against separation. Now, to test the reality of any province leaving Canada for the U.S., I researched the Canadian Constitution. The Canadian Constitution does not allow provincial separation. I also found that in 1997, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that while a provincial succession could not be made without a constitutional amendment, which in turn could not be made without federal government approval. So, it looks like, no, you can't do this. But the decision went on to say that if there was a democratically held referendum where a clear majority voted for independence, and the federal government and the province would need to have a constitutional amendment negotiation. So the Supreme Court has made it sound like it is possible that a province could secede from Canada, but it is a complicated, long-shot process. If it could be done, most, if not all, of Western Canada would like to be independent or join the United States. Eastern Canada, which is much more liberal, would never consider such a thing. Now, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, in response to the Supreme Court ruling I just mentioned, has introduced legislation making it easier to trigger a referendum on provincial separation, reducing the required petition signatures from around 600,000 signatures to approximately 177,000. In May 2025, she indicated that she would hold a referendum on provincial separation in 2026 if citizens gather the required signatures. Now, however, several First Nation chiefs in Alberta have pushed back against separatist rhetoric, addressing a letter to Premier Smith urging her to respect the treaty rights of those First Nations and reminding her that Alberta is on land of treaties with the Canadian Crown that any provincial government cannot unilaterally offer. So this is getting more and more complicated. Now, these tensions with Canada come at a time that's particularly challenging moment in our shared history. Our economies are deeply integrated, from energy networks to manufacturing supply chains and so on. Now, the automotive sector is especially vulnerable. A typical vehicle crosses the border 7 times during production. The imposed tariffs have already disrupted this delicate economic ecosystem, with early reports of plant shutdowns and layoffs on both sides of the border. Americans may not fully appreciate how central Canada has been to our national security. Since 9/11, Canada has been a crucial partner in intelligence sharing and border security. In Afghanistan, Canada suffered the highest per capita casualty rate among coalition forces. In fact, 158 Canadian soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice in that conflict, the 3rd highest total among all coalition forces. Looking ahead, consequences of a fractured relationship could be severe. Beyond the immediate economic impacts, our ability to present a united front against global competitors would be compromised. China and Russia would undoubtedly seek to exploit these divisions, potentially offering Canada alternative partnerships in trade, defense, and diplomatic spheres of influence. So what should be done? First, the administration must recognize that the rhetoric matters. Suggesting annexation, even in jest, deeply offends Canadian sovereignty and national pride. Second, tariffs should be quickly resolved through bilateral negotiations that acknowledge our mutual interests. Finally, we should launch a comprehensive diplomatic initiative to rebuild trust with our northern neighbor. A major charm offensive is needed. Now, the United States and Canada don't just share a border. We share values, history, and a continental destiny. As Benjamin Franklin noted during the Revolutionary War, we must all hang together, or assuredly we shall hang separately. Now, this wisdom applies not just to the original 13 colonies, but it applies to our relationship with our closest ally and neighbor. I advise Trump to say nothing more about annexing any part of Canada, attractive though it is, and instead negotiate a settlement of the tariff disputes as quickly as possible. Beyond that, Trump needs to initiate a charm campaign, if you will, to win back the hearts of the Canadians. We need them as good friends in more ways than one, not the least of which is our own safety. Now, please discuss the Canadian situation with your friends and colleagues. Tell us what you think. What do they think? We love hearing from you in our comments section in this website. If you're watching our podcast, please like us and subscribe to this channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, please rate us and give us your review. Now, thanks for joining us today. I hope you will join us next time Until then, may God bless you and yours, and God bless America.